All right, I think we are back. Welcome to the channel, Nelly Nunes, where we talk about manga and the latest and greatest in Shonen Jump. Today we're going to be talking about Choujin X, which is the manga I mentioned in my first video yesterday, written by Sui Ishida, the writer of Tokyo Ghoul. But before we get into it, before we get into the summary of chapters 1 through 5, I'm going to ask you guys to please hit that like button, subscribe, hit that bell notification, and tell a friend about this channel. Originally, I was going to do a live reaction, but as I was kind of preparing my notes for this Choujin X stream, I realized that there's a lot to get into, especially in chapters 1 through 5. The first chapter is already like almost 80 pages, so I figured it'd be a good idea to catch up the new readers and anyone watching this video. I wanted to give them a little something to catch up on, also refresh myself because a lot happened and I haven't actually read the first chapter in a while. So yeah, let's do that really quickly, and then either, I don't think today, but likely tomorrow, if not today, then tomorrow we'll give you a live reaction of chapter 6. So we're gonna do this. We're gonna do this pretty quickly because my computer is about to die. So and I can't find my charger. So let's do this very quickly. I took some notes. Chapter 1 impressions. Very long chapter. Starts off with inside of an airplane where we meet this girl. We'll get her name later, but her name is Eli, and she's sort of holding these little tomatoes. They spell it with a Y. I don't know what makes the difference, but maybe they're just like special tomatoes or something. Also, the story seems to be in the future at some point or some alternate reality, but more on that later. All of a sudden, there's this smoky villain who reveals himself to be in the plane and uses this like smoky power to crash the plane. Everyone kind of goes up in smoke, and then all of a sudden the plane crashes. So weird intro, we have no idea what's going on there, aside from the little girl, the tomatoes, and then this old lady who is asking about what's going on, but we learn that the little girl is trying to get to the city in order to enter this this like fair in order to present her tomatoes and try to win the #1 prize. But all of a sudden, this smoky villain shows up, puts everyone up in smoke, crashes the plane. We'll find out a little bit more about that guy later and his intentions. So next, we're introduced to the main character, Tokyo, and his best friend, Azuma. Tokyo seems to have his homie, Azuma, on standby for any time something goes wrong. He calls up on him. In this situation that we're introduced to, Tokyo sees a group of guys harassing a girl. He promptly calls Azuma, who just kind of drops out of the air. I guess he was in the neighborhood, but he seems to be pretty gifted, kind of like Yuji from Jujutsu Kaisen. But Azuma kind of takes it pretty far. He like kicks one of the thugs in the arms, and then his bones pop out, which is kind of crazy. Also, I'm going to try not to curse in these videos, at least in the get-go. So let's see what happens next. He kicks the thug so hard that his bones pop out, which is kind of crazy. And that seems like it's going to be a problem later on. This thug seems like he's out for revenge as we meet the shadowy antagonist for these early chapters. We'll see him a little bit more, but he has like a mask. And he also offers these thugs a syringe, which we find out later can transform anybody into a Choujin, which means superhuman. Choujin means superhuman, basically, or Superman, but superhuman, I think, is the more correct term, more correct translation. We also learned that the city has been half destroyed by Choujin, so there's really no redeeming qualities until a little later on we find out. But it seems that even the good Chojins aren't really helping. If the city is already half destroyed, maybe it's kind of like when you have like superhumans fighting, like things, there's like a lot of collateral damage. So I'm assuming maybe that's what's happening, but it doesn't seem like we have the best impression of Chojins at this point. Anyways, Tokyo gets back home, has a flashback to elementary school where the teacher asks the class to draw an animal from the zoo that best represents them. As popular as his friend Azuma is, everyone says he's so strong, he's a lion. On the contrary, Tokyo is made fun of and is deemed a vulture by his classmates because he's always depending and sort of reaping the rewards and scavenging the rewards of his more confident, more courageous, more brave friend Azuma. So Tokyo and Azuma serve as volunteers. We get the flash forward, so we're back in the present. Tokyo and Azuma serve as volunteers to clean up the plane crash, but we find out that miraculously and mysteriously, the 200 survivors, 200 people in the plane survive, and there's hardly any damage to the plane. Also, I didn't realize planes were that big that it holds like hundreds of people. Maybe 100, but this at 200. So I'm thinking it's all, if not most of the survivors, most of the people in the plane survived, which didn't seem like that would be the case. But anyways, following that, they walk home where they are surprised, attacked by the thug we saw earlier, except now the thug has superhuman powers and can stretch his limbs like Mr. Fantastic or something. The manga at this point calls him the Flexi Choujin. After Azuma is beat to an inch of his life, Tokyo and Azuma are forced to inject themselves with the Choujin syringe that the Flexi Choujin had dropped at some point in this fight. Tokyo promptly turns into a bestial Choujin, looking like a half vulture, half human hybrid. However, Azuma doesn't turn into anything. In this new form, Tokyo is able to one-shot the Flexi Choujin and thus end Chapter 1. Chapter 2, Eli, who is born in a farming village, is revealed to be the name of the little girl who had the tomato that we saw in the airplane. She wakes up almost 16 hours after the plane crash, only to be chased after again by the smoke Choujin. So he's looking for her. He's chasing her even after this plane crashes. So after a lengthy chase, which is almost 10 pages long, I mean, this whole chapter is pretty much a chase scene. And there's a bunch of like beautiful two-page spreads. Definitely a chapter worth checking out. I mean, check this whole story out. It's really interesting. But after a lengthy chase, this gives us insight of the city that Tokyo lives in, where older technology like flip phones seem to be valuable. High-speed scooters seem to be valuable as well. We also get the name of the smoke Choujin, which is Chandra Hume. Finally, the city seems rife with like thugs and gangsters and gang members as Chandra takes out a gang member during the chase and forces the other gang members to help him chase after Eli. It's really weird because the gangsters, the thugs all have like sheep masks and like different like, I guess, livestock cattle masks, which is kind of weird, but kind of makes sense too with the Choujin being animals up to this point. After finally cornering Eli, Chandra tells Eli that they have been infected with his smoke power and that Eli has talent. At this point, Eli thinks back to her desires for a husband and a big family one day, only to be saved by another Choujin who fights off Chandra and reveals himself to be Hoshi Sendak, the Choujin protector of Yamato Prefecture. Hoshi tells Eli that she has been scouted by Chandra because of their aptitude, not for farming, which they have, which Eli has. They're a farmer, but they have an aptitude for helping people. The chapter ends with a look at Tokyo, who is home in his bathroom and is still trapped in his hybrid bird form and is scared to reveal himself to his family. Chapter 3 is a flashback of Tokyo carrying Azuma out after the fight with the Flexi Choujin. He is still in hybrid form, so he's sort of taking Azuma out. We don't know what the Choujin syringe did to Azuma just yet. We still don't know after 5 chapters, but now in this hybrid form, Tokyo is dealing with the results. He's taking showers full of feathers, eating with his beak, skipping school with a fever. And this is why I kind of called it the Japanese metamorphosis, but with superhumans. Curious about Azuma, the half-bird form Tokyo sneaks out telling his family that he's grabbing groceries. He's got like a little mask on and whatever. So, and they seem distracted the whole time. Every time we see them, his sister, who's like his sort of like mom, the woman raising him, is playing video games or something. And then his dad's just kind of distracted and watching the video game. It's kind of weird. This whole story is really kind of weird, but very interesting, very unique. In front of Azuma's house, Tokyo calls him on the phone. Azuma has been kind of ghosting Tokyo, but at least tells him that, you know, maybe the Choujin syringe turns things or people into the thing they most desire. But after more questioning from Tokyo, Azuma reacts and yells at Tokyo saying, "Think for yourself for once," which kind of leads Tokyo to more sadness and depression. We go back to the Flexi Choujin who's being tortured by the masked antagonist that we saw in the first chapter. The man wants to know who took the 2 syringes. The Flexi Choujin offers nothing except that it was a guy with a beak. Or at least that's what happened to the guy, and that the other guy didn't transform. He also says that the eyes behind that mask tells him, the Flexi Choujin, that he will die regardless. So after he tells him about the beak Choujin, the mask guy does that and eliminates the Flexi Choujin. Chapter 4, down on his luck, Tokyo is unironically feeding birds. At some point, the bird responds, telling Tokyo that Tokyo's decision to feed them is a sign of free will, so that he should be happy that even the most mundane thing, that he at least has the will to do the most mundane thing, at least. Even if he can't do something special like Azuma, at least he still has the free will to, you know, feed some birds or whatever. Tokyo spends, the birds also ask Tokyo to think what would Azuma do with his powers, with the Choujin powers, and Tokyo says that Azuma would probably learn more about himself, acquire powers, and eventually use this power to help himself, and then eventually help other people. He spends the rest of the day trying to return back to human form when all of a sudden he feels a tingle. This gives him the idea to go to a zoo to find a vulture and try to speak with the vulture. Instead, he runs into a girl that he becomes infatuated with. She helps him sort of break into this restricted area where the vulture is. Tokyo tries to speak to the vulture, but has no success. The girl, however, says this is adorable, goes up to Tokyo for a kiss, only to reveal herself as a snake Choujin and damn near eats Tokyo whole. That's the end of the chapter. Chapter 5, we get more of the masked man. In a flashback, he recruits the snake Choujin for money, I guess, and tells her about the beak Choujin. Fast forward to the present, the snake Choujin, who almost eats Tokyo, spits him out and tells him that when Choujin use their powers, that a signal is released that other Choujins can pick up. So she noticed that, then she used her power to, which was the tingle that Tokyo felt. She then gives Tokyo an opportunity to display his powers by running away. She gives him 3 times to do this. Tokyo is unable to use any powers and thus gets captured 3 times. She also uses like this venom to basically make him more urgent. But basically, she captures him 3 times, bites him with poison, and then prepares to eat him. All of a sudden, Eli, using her new smoke powers, shows up randomly, kind of breaks up the action. And this is the last page. And she shows up randomly and she meets Tokyo for the first time. in the midst of this snake monster and Tokyo, who is full of venom at this point. So that leads up to chapter 6. We're going to do more tomorrow, I think, most likely. But thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed this quick chapter 1 through 5 summary of Choujin X by Sui Ichida. I don't know why I'm so bright, but it's pretty hot in here. I'll get back to you guys soon. Thanks for watching. And yeah, like, subscribe, hit the bell notification, and we'll talk more Choujin X Chapter 6 live reaction tomorrow. Follow me on Twitter at Nelly Nunes. Thank you guys so much.